Okay. On? All right. Well, welcome everybody. I'd like to say class. Class. Well, welcome everybody, and thank you for being here tonight. And all those that submitted questions, thank you for doing that. Thank you to Durango Fire and Rescue, Chief Hal Doughty for being here. Also to all the first responders that are dedicated to our community. We really appreciate it. I'm Jack Llewellyn. I'm the Executive Director or CEO, whichever title, or janitor of the Durango Chamber of Commerce. So I appreciate the opportunity to be the moderator tonight. Tonight we're going to hear from Chief Doughty. He's going to provide a presentation on the 9R building, the architectural renderings, and some other pertinent information. I want to remind everybody too that be respectful, and during tonight's entire Q&A session, I will jokingly say, don't make me get up and come out there and ask you to leave. So just keep any of the comments to yourselves. Then we're going to have a question and answer session. We received 74 questions from 32 individuals. Questions fell under 21 related topics. Questions have been reviewed, organized them into, I'm going to say, similar categories, focusing on the issues. If we don't get to all the questions, the fire department will post answers on their website to each individual question. Some of the questions I might have asked about topics that are not in the fire department's jurisdiction, things like the Smiley Building, title company, city of Durango. So please know that the questions submitted were reviewed. And if the fire department, if it wasn't related to the project at hand, I decided to say, you know what, that's not in your wheelhouse. So we can pass that question back. After the presentation, we'll begin with the categories that receive the most questions and work through them until we have a hard stop at 8 o'clock. So with that, I'd like to turn it over to Chief Doughty for his presentation. It's about a half hour. At 25 minutes, I'll give you the
25 minutes, give me the wave. Yeah.
Okay.
We know I don't talk much, right? So, yeah. Great. Hey, thanks for being here tonight. We're really excited to get the chance to share what our vision is for the project that we've got planned for this area. My name is Hal Doughty. I'm the fire chief for Durango Fire Rescue. So if you live between the Palm Pass and Mondat, west of Fort Lewis Mesa or east of Bayfield or Ignacio, I'm your fire chief. And we are excited to get the opportunity to speak with you about the project as our plans have been fortified as we've moved forward. We've got some more information to give to you tonight than we've ever had before. So I'm glad to be able to be breaking some ground and giving you some new information. For those of you that provided questions, I really appreciate you sharing your thoughts with us and getting the questions to us so that we had some content to talk about. It was very interesting. Many of the questions were very common amongst all the people or most of the people that we received input from. Some of them were very unique, and there was only one person that asked about things. Our goal is to try to get through all of those in this presentation tonight. Although if we don't, like Jack said, we're going to provide answers to those via our website, and they'll be available on that. The recording of this presentation this evening will also remain available on our website through our YouTube channel. So you'll be able to go back, refer to this, or if you've got family or friends that aren't able to watch it or see it, certainly you can direct them to them in the future as well. Okay. So the start of our conversation, if I can get this to start to advance. All right, that's not a good start. Mike, will you just advance the slides for me? The start of our conversation is a little bit of a story of history. And our history with Durango Fire Protection District as it relates to the downtown fire station is one that starts in 1881, when we initially became a recognized fire department because the town of Durango recognized that they had a significant need to protect themselves from the ravages of fire. And we've maintained a presence as our organization through all of those years to its current standing in downtown Durango and serving Durango for all those years. And so we have been here for a very long time. We're excited to get the opportunity to continue to serve. And when I serve, I think it's important to understand kind of the breadth of that. In the downtown core area of Durango, we serve about 1,900 times a year just in this core area is our call volume for this area. So there truly is a need. As you can see on the map picture that we've got up, the current River City Hall site that we serve from is near the river. It's down off of Veterans Way, and it is about 1,000 feet driveway to driveway from the location that we're sitting at tonight. So about 1,000 feet difference on the other side of the train tracks and up the hill a bit. The significance of the location of the fire station is something that's really important for us to talk about, because we have a desperate need to have a platform from which to serve downtown Durango that's very close to where the incidents happen. Unlike our brothers and sisters in the police department who come to work and then go out on patrol, so they're roving throughout the community, we aren't able to do that with our large trucks and ambulances. And so it's critical that we get close to the people that we serve. Now, as we move forward on the history lesson from 1881 to more current days, in 1983, the city of Durango, which operated its own fire department, which was a division of the city, placed the fire department at the River City Hall site. And we've been there at that time. I've been told that that was a temporary location for the fire department. And we've served from that location ever since. It was never designed to be a fire department. And so even in the early days of the fire department being there, it didn't work very well, but they got through and they made it work. But over the years, we've had to increase the staffing levels. We've had the advent of a diverse workforce. So we've got men and women serving from that location now. And as we've moved forward, the concerns for safety, the room for the bigger trucks that we have to operate now, and the breadth of the services that we have to provide, as well as the diverse workforce that we've got to house there for 48 hours at a time, make it untenable for us to continue to serve from there. It also isn't upgradable. And so we believe that if there were ever going to be a fire station there, we would have had to tear down the whole site and rebuild on that site. We'll get to more discussion about that later. Could we hit a slide, Mike? So when we talk about how much do we serve and how much do we operate, the chart that you're seeing on here is indicative of this core area of Durango, including the downtown area and all the areas immediately adjacent to it. And as you look at that chart, you see the Bodo area, the downtown area, uptown, and East Animas area are really significant factors in the total amount of calls that we run. Now, when you consider the area that we cover, 325 square miles, 58 miles on the north-south axis from the north part of our district to the south, we do that via the use of 15 fire stations. And we do that with about 180 folks in this community that stand up and say, I will be there on your worst day to try to help you solve your problems. Those men and women serve in the capacity either as volunteers or as part-time employees or full-time employees, some of them strictly administrative staff, some of them strictly operational staff. But they are the ones that actually come to your house, serve you when you have a fire problem, when you have a medical problem, things like that. I couldn't be more proud of the men and women that work for us. And I got to tell you, it's getting more exciting every day as the new kids come to our door and knock on it and say, I want to be a fireman. We have the opportunity to see all kinds of new energy, new talents, new ideas about how to serve this community. And our organization is strong now and growing greatly. And that's important for us because as you look at the call volume statistics, I want to tell you a bit of another story. In 2021, we ended the year having answered 16% more calls than we had ever answered in a year before. And today, as I stand here, we are 26% ahead for 2022, year-to-date comparisons from last year than where we were last year. And what that tells me is that we're not going to get the opportunity to go away. The need for the services that we provide continue to increase and continue to increase. And the next obvious question is, well, Chief, why is that happening? And the true answer to that is we aren't really sure. We don't think it's directly related to COVID. We ran a lot of COVID calls for a bit, but that's stabilized now, thankfully, that we're where we are, hopefully recovering from the pandemic. We know that there's a major increase in things like alcohol and drug usage. We know that there's a major increase in the frequency of time that we're seeing patients for mental health issues. We know that our long-range transport services that we provide, we're taking psych patients out of town on a much more frequent basis. And so we know that that's a part of the driver for that, but that's not the whole, because we're seeing growth in all aspects across all the calls that we run. So our frequency of needing to be there for people is getting more and more and more robust all the time. So,
People was the middle column, we couldn't see that.
I'm sorry, the really tall middle column is our District 7. That's the Three Springs area. And the reason that that's so significant, and I'll show you on the map in a minute as well. The reason that that's so significant is because the hospital's there. It generates a ton of call numbers, because when we do transports from the hospital, all of them tag as that address. Yep. Okay, yep, there's the heat map that I was talking about. You can see that the area that looks like the sun is the hospital. The downtown Durango area there in the middle is quite clearly very busy for us. And then the area to the upper left side of the 550 corridor is a nursing home that we run to on a very frequent basis for transports as well as emergency medical calls and things. If we could get back, Mike, to that question that we had first. Since the 1983 move to River City Hall, as I said, our trucks have gotten bigger. We need more of them to serve the downtown area. And we have a much different workforce than we had in the days when we were stringing that station location together to be able to serve. And so as we move forward and we gain the ability to start saving for capital investments and start expanding the services that we provide, we knew very clearly that we were going to have to either significantly upsize and upgrade that location, or we were going to have to find another location to move to. And as time went by, I ended up becoming the fire chief here, and our board of directors tasked me immediately when they offered me the job of fire chief. Sort of my number one marching order was, we need to get working on our capital projects. And the most important one of those for us is the downtown fire station. And so I set out 6 or 7 years ago when I became the chief, I set out to try to find a new location from which we could serve. And I thought, this is going to be a really cool project. I'm going to get to learn about real estate, and I'm going to get to learn how to build a building and do all kinds of stuff. And boy, did I underestimate the challenges that was going to bring. Across the course of that 6 or 7 years, I worked pretty exhaustively to try to find a place that we could replace our downtown station at. We considered several city sites. And the impetus behind the city sites was that in working with the city manager, it was my understanding that his preference, and so too the council at that time's preference, was to take a city-owned site, partner with the fire department, and have us build a new building on it. And then we would have a downtown fire station. Our board was open to that idea because the tax money that the city operates on and the tax money that we operate on is very much the same money. And it's an asset for the people. This isn't my fire station or my board's fire station or the city's fire station. This is your fire station. And so we were excited about the opportunities to do that. We ended up vetting a bunch of sites. Some of you may have attended the charrette that we did when we were considering the current River City Hall site, the transit center parking lot site, and the railroad parking lot site. And we were guided at that time toward the railroad parking lot as a preferential site. So we went down that road. We designed a fire station to be built on that. There's an acre and a half of land there. We're partnering with Mr. Harper, working through the issues of shared parking for handicapped folks, how he would still operate with a fire station in the majority of his parking lot. And we were going down that road. And we got all the way to the point where we needed to then come to the city council with our rendering of what that fire station would look like. And so much public pressure had built against that idea that we were shut down. We had expended $40,000 designing a fire station that never would be. And so it was frustrating. And I think we backed away from that a little bit and took occasion to learn some lessons from what it was that we had done. And then we stepped forward again and we started looking again. Across the course of this search, we looked and individually vetted 31 different sites. And those were individual sites. Those were sites that were, if we could get this property and this property and this property and combine them, we would be able to make this work. And at the end of the day, we struck out. I hired a consultant who knows this town very well and tried to get his help, enlist his help in finding us a site. And we didn't have any more luck than we had had before. It was incredibly frustrating. And just before Mr. LeBlanc left as our city manager, we arrived at an idea that we may be able to stay on the current site that we're on at River City Hall, that we may be able to partner with the city on that site. And we could buy that property and tear the building down and rebuild a new fire station. And we thought that we were on track for moving in that direction. And then it became clear that that plan wasn't acceptable either. And so at the end of the day, we were left after 6 years of looking with no future downtown fire station site, a contract with the city that stipulates there's money that's being designated from the city to the fire district in the name of capital projects. And that capital project fund needs to be restricted to replacing the downtown station. And that has to be done before the end of the performance period of the 15 years of that contract. That was 8 years ago. So we've got 7 years left and we have to replace the downtown station. So I told you all that so I could tell you this. We got a call one day and it said, have you guys considered the 9R school building administrative site for your fire station? And we said, no, we knew it may come available for sale one day. What's the deal? And they said, it is up for sale. It's open on a nationwide real estate offering on a sealed bid process. And that sealed bid process is open and you can place a bid on that. So we had looked at Buckley Park. We had looked at some other properties close to this. So we had an idea about the response characteristics. We knew that this was within the corridor that we were looking for. And we thought, we're gonna make a go of this. And so we pulled together all the information that we needed. I met with my board of directors to make sure that I wasn't operating outside of their will. And we filed a sealed bid for this property. And I won't bore you with all the details, but there was a process. And we went through that process. And at the end of the day, the fire district emerged victorious, I felt. We got the opportunity to actually buy this property. And that was one of the things about that stands out the most to me. And it's fortuitous a little bit that I'm standing here in front of the dais that the school board sits at, because they felt very strongly in that opportunity that they were doing the thing that the community would appreciate the most, which was passing along a property that had belonged to the school board for all these years, a property that was funded by the taxpayers, that was overseen for all these years by an elected board of directors tasked with educating our children and serving this community. And they had the opportunity to then sell it to us, a service agency who is guided by an elected board of directors and operates on tax money and would use it for the next 100 years to assure that fire, EMS, and police services are available in this community. And we thought, this is a marriage made in heaven. This is going to be wonderful. The community is going to stand and clap and laud our decision-making here. And I got to tell you, it's been a little bit less dramatic than that. So as we move forward, we are very attached to this site. We have created what we think is a great plan. We are very much looking forward to moving forward in that plan. And we've got some artist renderings to show you what that plan is going to look like tonight. And we've got a multitude of things that are going on right now, some of which are studies and information gathering and information sharing that are going to be the direct result and how we're going to answer the questions that you provided for us this evening. So with no further ado, Mike, could we get to the pictures, please? How am I doing on time, Jack?
We're good.
Okay, perfect. So the first few are kind of further out, and these were the more original pictures. This is obviously the front of the building that we're in currently. And as you can see, it remains very, very heavily unchanged. There is a restriction on this building currently based on a grant that was received by the school district to replace the windows and do some work on the roof. It stipulates that as a historic building, because it was a historic preservation grant, this building can't be changed on the exterior. None of the exterior look or functionality of the building can be substantially changed until the end of that performance period, which is very close to now. It's in 2025. So that restriction comes off in 2025. The topic of the historic preservation stuff, I know is going to come up in the questions. So I won't go too far in depth on that, but I've got what I think is a great answer about how I'd like to proceed. It is not, I'll say right now, the fire district's intent whatsoever to tear this building down, to substantially change the outside of this. We want to preserve the historical benefit to our community of having this wonderful old 1916 school building that'll stand for years and years to come in service to our community. And we're going to do everything that we can to protect that. We believe that that's one of the true benefits and assets that we've got in purchasing this piece of property. If we could go on, Mike.
I'm sorry.
We were unsure how our screen sharing venture was going to go in this. It's our first time trying to delve into this and make our meetings public. So okay. You can actually advance on just a bit more if you can get it to kind of come under control.
Why was the River City Hall option shut down?
Yep, I'm gonna actually cover that. There's a bunch of questions about that. It's a great question, though. The big answer on that I want you guys to understand is that we don't own River City Hall. The city owns River City Hall, and through the course of us trying to work on this project for 7 years, one of the things that's happened is that we've changed city managers. We've changed the membership on our city council a couple of times. And as we receive new groups of people that are governing us, as new people come in the city council, the ideas about how things should go change, quite frankly. And we have asked, we tried to enter the game where we would partner on that site and we would build a building on a site that the city owned. We felt like that would be a great deal for the city because as soon as it was done, we'd have a modern place to serve from and the city would have an asset for the future, but that didn't work. We tried to arrive at a place where we would buy the River City Hall property from them and then tear down the building and reconstruct the site. And that didn't work at the time that we were trying to do that. And currently where we are is that we now own a piece of property that's going to work great for us to serve from and to create a platform for this. And so very much like if you lose your keys and you start looking for them, and then you find your keys, you stop looking for them. So we've kind of stopped looking at other sites. But some of the questions that we had, and Jack's going to do a great job of getting to these, but I'll bring it up now.
But I'm going to interrupt just because you've got the time on this.
Yeah.
So if you want to jump back into this, and we will get to
Perfect.
that, because that
Yeah.
is one of the questions.
Perfect. This is what we think the front view of the new building constructed with the old building is going to look like. And as you can see, this is sitting on what the footprint is currently for the big picture school building, or math and sciences wing, as those that went to school here when that was built came up. That was built, I believe, in 1964 or early 1960s. It is not protected as a historic building, and it will be replaced with what we're affectionately now calling our carriage house building. This is the apparatus bay building that will house the fire trucks and ambulances, and will house the firefighters, the men and women that serve operationally in that capacity in the spaces above that building. It will have 4 apparatus bays that are 60 feet deep and 20 feet wide. Those are the doors. The jack arch carriage house looking doors will open vertically rather than horizontally. So it'll be a really nice addition. Our architect, Tracy Reynolds, has a great deal of experience designing buildings that fit with the downtown design sort of schematics. And so he's the one that's been working on this for us. And we said, we want to build a building here that's going to enhance the look of the neighborhood, that's going to add to the kind of the flavor and the beauty of the 12th Street area that we're on. And so this is what the front of that looks like. If we could go to the next one, Mike.
So pictures just take a moment to position.
You got about 6 minutes.
Okay. One of the things that might be coming to your mind as I talk about the men and women that serve here is that operationally, on a day-to-day basis at the current downtown station, we have 8 people that work at that station each day. The bunking facilities there, to give you an example of the inadequacy of that building, are smaller. If you get thrown in jail on your way home from this gathering this evening, you're going to sleep in a bedroom that has more space in it than the men and women that will be sleeping at River City Hall and in the fire station today. It's inadequately designed to house people overnight. It isn't a sprinkled building and would be an incredible feat to try to make it into a sprinkled building. And our ability to expand on that site, going up, going sideways, is really limited as well. So there's some real inadequacies associated with that. Is this still troubling you, Mike?
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Okay. Jack, why don't we go to the questions, and then
Okay.
possibly toward the end of that, we'll move back to the pictures. I apologize for the technical difficulty.
I'm just glad I'm not the only one that happens to. So again, I want to point out that 74 questions were submitted from 32 individuals and falling under the 21 related topics. I ranked these in the questions that we received the most questions on behalf of. And we're going to start from those because 14 people had similar questions. And that is, will the fire department conduct a traffic study on the impacts, the best routes, and how will you work with the city and with CDOT to identify those?
Yeah, it's a great question. I know that it's a major concern of the folks both that live in this neighborhood and also that have businesses in this neighborhood are really concerned about. I know quite clearly that 12th Street traffic is already a problem. And with diagonal parking that happens on both sides of that street, how many of you like me have had to wait at the bottom of that for traffic to clear so that we could drive back up? This is not a problem that the fire department created, but I'm hopeful that it's a problem that the fire department is going to get to be a part of fixing for all of you. And we believe that there are many opportunities for different design features that we could change the parking there that's going to open up that roadway and make it a viable thoroughfare in both directions at the same time for folks traveling on 12th Street. I want to remind you that this building was designed as a school. For all these years that it served as a school, it has served with school buses coming here in the morning and the evening and driving kids to school here and driving kids away from school. And the profile of the school bus is very similar to the profile of a fire truck. And so for all these years, the traffic that has been operating around this building and in this area has been facilitating those large trucks. We don't want to continue doing that in a format that provides an unsafe thoroughfare. And so we really want to work on trying to fix the 12th Street problem. We have commissioned, as a part of this project, a traffic study. We were incredibly fortunate. We were able to hire an engineering firm who is already working on, for the city, the Midtown project, including the 14th Street one-way portion of that project. The same firm is working on the 11th Street fix and reconnect where it goes through the Walgreens parking lot. That gentleman is also working on the 12th Street issue and the bicycle and pedestrian underpass project that the city has proposed and is working on. So he's got a wonderful breadth of knowledge already about a lot of the traffic factors associated with this area. That provides us a great opportunity for some synergies, both to design an engineering plan that is going to fit with the rest of the projects that are already underway and that the city has going. And it is also, we will benefit from the traffic studies that have already been done throughout all seasons of the year, not just the summer, not just the winter, not spring or fall, but all through the year, to benefit from that so that we can really get an idea about those counts. We believe that that study is underway. We know that that study will need to be a part of our initial submittals of our plans, our site plan, all of those things for moving toward going to the Planning Commission and then gaining permitting to build this project. And we believe that we'll have the results of that traffic study by late March or early April. And we are hopeful that we'll be able to provide the results of that to you. A portion of the scope of work that we agreed to was the opportunity for that engineering firm to stand up with us at a public meeting and to explain to the public the results of the traffic study and the engineering behind that. Similarly, the parking features are going to be studied both with the traffic plan as well as providing opportunities for people to weigh in on several different formats of modifying the parking to try to gain some perspective on what the public's preferences and inputs would be. I know, as an example, that folks that are in the building that's across the street are very concerned about losing their parking just in front of their building. Folks are very concerned about the future use of Buckley Park and what the parking opportunities may be there. And I think that we have several different formats that we're going to propose, and we will give an opportunity for the public to weigh in on their preferences about what parking format matches up best. Finally, on the parking thing.
So that's because that is my next question, because
Great.
9 people do have parking questions. And we all know parking is a premium, especially in the Midtown area that the Urban Renewal Authority, or URA, has identified. So specifically, someone wondered how many parking spaces will be eliminated along 12th Street and elsewhere?
Yeah, so it's a great question, and I know it's one of major concern. I'd be concerned about this too if I worked or lived directly in this area. And so the plan as drawn, which I want you to understand is still a draft. It's a concept at this point, and we're trying to continue refining it and getting to the point where it is our final plan that we will submit. But the plan as drawn relies on the premise that we would keep diagonal parking available on one side of 12th Street, and we would eliminate that diagonal parking on the other side, therefore gaining the width that's needed to create an active and safe thoroughfare in both directions on 12th Street. We could do that to give you an idea of what the different options may be. We could do that on either side of the street. Our preference would be to keep the parking on the Buckley Park side of 12th Street and to eliminate it on the south side. And the reason that that's our preference would be because it makes a right turn onto Main better for the fire trucks if we have the distance from the right-hand margin or curbside. That is not set in stone. It's the way that the plan is drawn because it was the way that we weighed in that we would prefer to see it. But as I said, there are other options as well. Some of those other options include parallel parking still available on both sides of the street. The numbers that I'm going to present to you now, because I've had people that have seen the plans that we've got and started trying to count what the parking spaces are and things like that. So just to give you an idea of what it is that we think that we've got going here is that if we went with the parking on the right side or the Buckley Park side of 12th, we would end up losing a total of 24 public parking spaces now. But with the rest of the development of our plan, we would regain from that the opportunity for 26 public parking spaces that would be vacated by our police department just down a block and a half. We would also regain sites that are along the side of this property adjacent to the alleyway that could become public parking if they were not being used by the 9R staff, that those are promised to if they end up staying in this same area. And we would appreciate a net gain of 18 public parking spaces by making that change. And so while the location of some of those parking places would change, the net gain would be that there would be more public parking spaces available at the end of doing the project that way than there would be the other. If we opted for diagonal parking to stay on the other side of the street, it would mean a net gain of a bit less and a loss of a bit more. And part of the reason behind that is just because of the way that the parking spaces are laid out and what we would be able to do as far as still making turns. But as you can see in both of those cases, we would appreciate a net gain of parking spaces for public parking opportunities in town, which is a big deal to us. The other thing that's a big deal to us is that we understand that people that, as an example, have spaces or work in the Victorian across the street, don't want to change the opportunity to be able to park just in front of that. We understand that there are businesses just adjacent to this property that rely on the ability for their customers to be able to park and come in. And so we really and truly want to work with the public to get ideas on what's the most suitable and what's the best way for us to modify this. One, so that, and probably most importantly, so that we can make 12th Street an actual street that's safe and facilitates two-way traffic as it's supposed to. And two, so that we can facilitate what we need to do in order to be able to operate fire trucks and ambulances safely, and at the same time, have public have the ability to park.
Thank you. Also, this is my comment. I've also heard that the transit center has been designed for a parking garage. So that could also be another thing with the bigger, the bigger picture and all this to me that the city should explore and get serious about putting a parking garage somewhere. So 8 people asked, has the fire department explored renovating the current fire station at River City Hall? And has the city offered that option?
Yeah, so back to the question that was asked. So based on the things that I've already said about that, the city owns that property, and I can't speak for what their plans are if we move out of there and what that could become. But I can speak from our perspective. And there's a number of reasons why that site was challenging, but those aren't any reasons that we probably couldn't overcome if we were trying to rebuild there. But as we went through that process and our opportunities seemed like they were there and then dwindled, and seemed like they were there and dwindled, what we found more than anything else is that the value of us now owning a piece of property to develop a downtown fire station on that works for both us and the police department and is going to secure a site from which we can serve for years and years to come is a really big deal. And the city, to my understanding, still does not have the desire to divest themselves of that site. Now, similar to that question was another question that was asked. Jack and I had the opportunity yesterday to go through all of the questions that you asked together. And it was phrased a bit differently, which was, has the city council or has the city offered you that site? And the answer to that is no. Where the relationship between us and the city stands is that the city, in our last joint meeting of our fire board and the city council, offered that they wanted to make sure that we understood they were willing to revisit other alternate locations for the fire station to be built in, should this project not be able to be accomplished, or should we not be able to do this project here. And so in response to that, I've spoken with the city manager, and I've indicated clearly that we, one, very much appreciate the opportunity to have that as a fallback, and two, will absolutely come to the city council if that ends up being the eventuality, so that we can work on that. But as I said, when you lose your keys and all of a sudden you find your keys, you stop looking for your keys. And our focus has clearly turned from trying to find a place to, we have a place and we're actively trying to work on what would be the greatest, best opportunity to create a wonderful emergency service center for this community for the future. And so we have stopped looking for an alternate place because we believe that we can make this work at this location.
So 6 folks asked about the cost. How much is the total cost for the renovation of the 9R administration building, removal of big picture, asbestos remediation, and building the new carriage house? So give us an idea of what that looks like and what those expenses are going to be.
Yep. Yeah. So one of the things that it's worthwhile to say as we move forward is that our understanding of where the city is as a partner with the fire district in building a new facility that will house the fire department and police department is that as we proposed that opportunity to them, they obviously didn't just jump in with both feet and say, yep, we're in, we're committed. That isn't the way that things work. But what they said was, we're intrigued by the opportunity, and we know that we have a facility need that includes replacing our police department. And we'd like to look at what this offer entails, right? Is there enough space there? Would it work as a police department? Can we afford that? What would the cost of that be compared to other options that we may have? And I'm going to work really hard not to speak on behalf of our partners at the city, because that's just not appropriate for me to do. But I will share with you some ideas and some understandings that I have. And they look like this. The city did move forward with an action to direct the city manager to work with the fire district to invest the money that it would take to see if we could conceptually draw into the plans for the remodel of this building to include all of the needs of the police department, not just for their current needs, but for what they foresee as their near-term future needs for expansion. So if we're going to get another deputy chief of police, or if we're going to add another division, or robustly improve the number of offices that we need for investigations, or whatever that is. And so that's the direction that we've been moving. And the resultant plans, both floor plans and the pictures that you're seeing, are indicative of that, of the premise that the fire district and the police department will operate out of this building as an emergency services center. And so when we get down to costs associated with this, very clearly, and again, I want you to understand that all of this is a work in progress. And as we learn new things and we get pricing in from contractors, or from not contractors, but people that have experience at doing different things, we add those factors in. And we think that the cost factors look like this. We purchased this property for a total of $6.9 million of value. And that was done with $5 million of cash money and $1.9 million in in-kind contributions that were of enough value to the school district that they were willing to take those on as a part of the purchase agreement, purchase price. And so for any of you that have gotten to see that contract, because I know it's out in the public, we've shared that publicly. You'll see in the purchase documents that there's a $5 million cash amount and $1.9 million in in-kind things. And the in-kind considerations included such things as the ability for the 9R school administration to continue operating out of this building for the balance of this calendar year. And so the fire district won't actually gain possession of or the use of this building until basically January 1st of 2023. Similarly, they had a school session underway. And so the Big Picture School is currently occupied by students, I understand, somewhere around 100. I heard today at a presentation. And so they'll continue using the Big Picture School building through the balance of the school year, and we'll gain control of that or access to that after July of this year. And so that puts some time frame things in place for you as well. The other in-kind contributions had to do with providing services, continuing services to the school district, had to do with some dedicated parking spaces that school district employees could continue to use in our occupancy on the site. Specifically, if they end up operating in an area close to this or adjacent to this, because metered parking is problematic when you've got day-to-day employees, and Third Avenue parking where it's not metered is limited in the amount of space that there is. So all of that stuff came into place. 6.9 million in building acquisition, property acquisition for us. We believe that the renovation of this building to modernize it, to bring the plumbing up to date, the electrical up to date, the technology feeds that we need to operate as a professional organizations here. The mezzanine area or the overlook area that's up above you is structurally unsound. So there's some structural elements that have to be fixed with that. And then the renovation into office spaces that would be conducive to a police department and fire administration services are going to end up costing us $6.724 million is the budgetary number currently. $6,724,000. We believe that the construction of the carriage house building, which will house the apparatus, house operational firefighters, men and women that serve each day, is going to cost another $7.507 million. So $7,500,000 and some change. The administrative costs associated with all of that for permitting, we pay our own impact fees as well as the city's impact fees for water, for streets, for schools, for all of that stuff. When we do a project, they end up totaling, including architectural services and things like that, $1.9 million toward the project for a grand total project cost of $25,750,000. And the way that ends up getting broken down, the fire district has already fronted $5 million toward that and gained credit for $6.9 million of value. Durango Police Department's portion of this, as currently designed and as we're moving forward, looks like $9.9 million. Now, I'll remind you as a place marker for how that rates, that in the 2015 study on facilities that the city council at that time had commissioned, they said that replacing their police department was a high priority. And they also contemplated that factor of $19 million was used in 2015 dollars for what that consultant thought it might cost in order to replace that police station. So you can already start to see some of the economies of scale that we think that we can appreciate for our community by partnering together on this. $19 million in 2015 dollars compared to a factor of just under $10 million today to take advantage of moving into this facility, modernized and ready to go, I think represents a huge benefit. Although that's a city decision. If it were mine to make, I would have already made it, but it's not mine to make. And so we're working with them as partners to try to get there. We think that the fire department portion of this project in total is going to be $15,500,000. And that's because we're tearing down and constructing a new building next to this that will be somewhere in the neighborhood. I apologize, Randy, do you remember square footage of the carriage house? 24,000 square feet total. And then the space that we'll be utilizing in here is our administrative space. And so that's what we believe the cost factors are currently. That includes all the things that people have been concerned about. That includes what our understanding is of permitting fees, impact fees, tap fees, everything that it's going to take to get through this process. Now, I want to tell you a bit more about the way that we do this because the fire district has recently done 2 other capital projects. One was a brand new training facility that we built just adjacent to our Station 1 in Buckley Park. And that project came in under budget and ahead of schedule for the finish date. And the other project that we did recently was a major expansion of the services at our Station 3, which is our station out by Bread off of 32nd Street extended. So County Road 252 and County Road 250 is the nearest intersection. That project came in way behind schedule because we suffered some really significant weather delays, but we came in finishing right on budget for what we've been told that project would cost. 2 different general contractors that we dealt with on those projects, but very successful outcomes on both of them with managing your money that we're stewards of and responsible for. Now, the way that we've done that is we manage our construction projects through a process that's called design build. It's also sometimes referred to as general contractor at risk, and there's some other names for that. But basically what we do is we bring a general contractor on board during the late stages of our planning so that we can take advantage in design of value engineering opportunities and things that we can do to better efficiently build a building like this. The other thing that it does for us is that it gets our general contractor on board so that they can really sharpen their pencils and be working with subcontractors to arrive at what the final cost will be before we lock into and hit the go button. And so as a safety net, for those of you that are concerned about the potential for runaway costs on this, we don't ever start one of these projects. A shovel will not go into the ground until we end up with a contract in front of us that includes a guaranteed maximum price. And that guaranteed maximum price for us is our general contractor locking into the price that they're saying this is going to cost us. I keep looking back there because Matt Opperly's sitting back there, and he's a representative of our general contractor that did our training facility. It's a wonderful opportunity for us. I think it works well for the general contractors, and it's a great protection for taxpayer-funded entities to assure that their projects aren't getting off balance or out of line.
Did you get all that? And I would recommend the cost of everything and supply chain delays, all of that stuff. Yeah, work with your contractor closely because it seems like prices just keep going up and up and up, especially with fuel charges. So moving along, 4 people asked about Buckley Park.
Yeah.
And Buckley is an incredible park right here in the center of downtown. And they want to know what will be the impact to the park and can events continue to be held there once the fire station is in this building?
Yeah, it's a great question. It became clear to us really quickly when we started down this path that a lot of people were really concerned about Buckley Park. And so I want to make a few things clear as we start this conversation. One is that the fire district doesn't own Buckley Park, and we never will as far as I know. Buckley Park was separated officially. They did they went through the subdivision process before we could get to the point of closing on this property. The subdivision process had to go through, which which officially drew a line and subdivided Buckley Park from the property that you see there, formerly known as 9R Administrative Building, and now known as the Fire District's new fire station. If you look at the rendering that's on the board, you can see there just on the west side of the asphalt that's now looking like a straight line. Initially, the subdivision plat put our property line 14 feet further west of where that asphalt is showing. And that encompassed several of the mature trees. The rendering here does not include a realistic version of what trees are there or what kinds of trees. But it included several trees that were then on this side of that property line and would be under the fire department's control rather than part of the park. It also cut off what is the top of the affectionately known as the sledding hill in Durango for the children of Durango. And I think at one point in the newspaper, I was accused of stealing the innocence of our children in Durango or something because we were going to ruin the sledding hill. That's not our intent at all. We want to be a part of this community. We have been since 1881. We've been an essential function in this community. We don't want to see anything bad happen. We have a need to build a station from which we can serve you. We don't want to do away with the park. And so while we don't own the park, we are also not going to do anything that's going to be detrimental to that park. So we voluntarily worked with both the city and the school district and gave up that 14 feet. I don't know what the value of that is. 14 feet wide by as deep as this property is. That's worth a bunch of money. We didn't pay any less for the property, but we gave up that 14 feet so that the trees would remain a part of the Buckley Park parcel. The city, who employs an arborist, could be responsible for those trees and caring for them and so on. And it would not encompass our portion of the property now, does not encompass any portion of what's known as the sledding hill. Also, I had an opportunity to meet with the tree people. Are there any of the tree people here? Raise your hand if you're a tree person. I've become one. So one of the things that came out early was that the fire department's going to go ahead and cut down a bunch of the trees on the property. And so I had occasion through this process to meet some really interesting people. And I had a meeting on site where we talked about the trees and who owned them and what those were. And so I can tell you too, that in our plans, I've realized that it's really important to people. And we have moved the offset of the front of the carriage house building back to allow for our apparatus to come out and go in between the mature trees that are the large cottonwoods that are out here along 12th Street. We've given up property so that the city or the Buckley Park parcel will have all the mature trees there. And our net plan for the site ends up being a net gain on the trees that are on site rather than a loss. So as a result of citizens' concerns, we've done all that work.
So events will still be able to happen at Buckley?
At the end of the day, the other thing about events is that people were concerned because as those of you that live in the neighborhood know, during the summer, there's live music here. There's sometimes closures. Brewfest, as an example, is a celebration that goes on in Buckley Park. And a portion of Main Avenue is typically closed between 12th and 13th there as part of that festival. We think that we can still have things happen that way. There's a significant permitting process to do something like that, which we're already involved in when there's special events going on. We come up with a traffic management plan for Snowdown. We come up with traffic management plans when the food festivals are going on and we close down significant portions. So long as we can be a part of that planning process and assure that we have a way to get out or can pre-stage units somewhere else if we're not going to have access, I think that we can work with all of that. And that would not be something that would be discontinued based on our presence here.
Can Tim Walsworth use your ladder truck to do the tree lighting?
You know what? Tim's a buddy of mine. He and I can talk outside of this forum.
He didn't ask me to ask that. Noise, so noise mitigation. A lot of people are concerned about that. And what will the fire department do for noise mitigation? And I'm thinking about, when you're rolling out of the station, responding to a call, follow-up question would be, how often are you responding out of the station with lights and siren?
Yeah.
I know that's a big concern.
Yeah, it is a big concern. I was shocked, honestly, that wasn't the number one question because so many people ask me about that. I know that folks that live here are really concerned about that. I know the folks that operate businesses here. We got I think one of our comments or questions came in from somebody who's operating a counseling service just adjacent here. And I think that all those things are really big concerns for us too, because we absolutely want to be good neighbors. And so I'll start down the road, and many of you have already heard part of this, but I think that I've got some more good answers for you. So keep listening as I go. One of the things that I'll tell you is that it's interesting that the fire department buildings have to be built where the people are, because that's who we serve. And so everywhere that we've got a fire station, we have this same issue. And this was a huge concern issue from the folks that lived in the area when we were doing the expansion of Station 3 out by Bread. For any of you that are familiar with that site, we've got affordable housing, elderly living complex, and assisted living complexes are our next door neighbors there. And just behind us are dentist offices, a counseling service as well. That counseling service deals with folks that are dealing with PTSD. So they were like, even early on, they were concerned, are you guys going to use nail guns? I can't have explosions or nail guns or things that sound like gunshots going off while we're doing this counseling sessions. So we've got experience working on that thing. There's some technological things that I want you to know about that prevent us from being obtrusive with our lights and mostly I think everybody's concerned about the sirens, right? One of those is a system that's called EMD, Emergency Medical Dispatching. And it's a system nationally recognized. It's a national database. And if you dial 911 with a medical emergency or any kind of emergency, the first thing the dispatcher says is, 911, what's your emergency? And then you say whatever the words are that you're going to say next. And if it has anything to do with medical emergency or a fire or emergent response, they start looking through a set of charts that they've got or computer, they've got computer programs that they can also use to start paring that down. And what they do in their information gathering is they determine how much of a life threat is the situation that you're describing. And from that, they start out by dispatching our units in either an emergent or a non-emergent fashion based on that. Now, in a non-emergent fashion, our units run out without any lights on, without any sirens on, and drive to the call. It's the safest way for us to respond. So we prefer that over putting our 25-year-old firefighters behind the wheel with lights and sirens blaring. Gets everybody excited. I still get excited when I'm driving like that. And so it's a much safer platform from which we can respond. And so we prefer that if we can. Chief Krupa was able to pull up the stats this morning, and it looks like currently for all of 2021, across 6,400 calls, 29% of those calls were emergent response dispatches, and 71% of our total volume of calls were non-emergent responses. So less than 1/3 of the time that we leave, are we leaving in an emergent fashion where we have to run lights and sirens. The other thing about have to run lights and sirens is that Johnny and Roy on emergency 911 in the old days didn't do us any justice at all. It's very different from what you see on TV. It isn't the kind of thing where the door goes up and the sirens are blaring as we drive out of the apparatus bays. The sirens deafen us as much as they deafen everybody else. And we don't want to run them until we have to. We use those to gain attention as we approach intersections that have traffic at them so that we can move through them safely. If we're responding in a fashion where we're going to go against the traffic signals, go through stop signs, things like that. And so it's very uncommon for the fire trucks or ambulances to ever turn on a siren directly out of the fire station. Typically, we're blocks away from the fire station before we ever turn those on. At nighttime, at 3 o'clock in the morning, many times they'll turn on the lights as they respond so people can see us, but no siren, all the way to the call that they're going to. So I hope that somewhat sets your mind at ease. The other thing that I'll tell you is our neighbors at the other stations that we operate in this community are not struggling with that problem at all either. So we don't get comments about that. We get Christmas cards from our neighbors. So I think that that's a really big deal. The other thing that we have that really helps us is we've got a technological advance that's called traffic preemption. And that allows us to be able to change the traffic signals ahead of us as we approach intersections so that vehicles that are in front of us moving in the same direction of us can safely move through those intersections and get out of our way. Opposing traffic is stopped and oncoming traffic is slowed with a flashing yellow. And we've recently worked with CDOT to get permission to expand the scope of how we use that so that we can use that in instances where we need to get through the intersections, but we're not in a good spot to run lights and sirens. And we're going to add a third category of response, which is either non-emergent or emergent is what we've got now. And the third category, because I don't remember the word, urgent response. And that is utilizing our traffic preemption so that we can continue moving through traffic, but without the obtrusive lights and sirens. And it's in response to concerns for this new station, as well as all of the other areas that we serve. The last thing that I'd like to mention to you is that one of the things that we benefited from very early on in this process is we tried to meet with a bunch of the neighbors. We met with Holly and Key, just the closest neighbors that we've got here. We met with a lot of other people that have houses, businesses, and things in the area. And we benefited pretty greatly from some of the perceptions that they had about what the problems might be. If we can get to the point where we're able to move through the pictures, I hope to be able to show you that on our eastern boundary on this property, separating the houses whose backs face us, but the houses that are addressed on 3rd Avenue, we intend to leave a separation wall that would help be a sound barrier so that we're mitigating the sound of the trucks operating, driving in and out and things from our site to those sites. The other thing that I would have never considered in a million years that Holly and Key brought up in our conversation with them was the fact that if we go taller or closer to their property, we're going to have huge shading issues for them. And they enjoy sitting in their beautiful backyard. I got to sit in her backyard to talk to her and enjoying the evenings. And if we build a great big building next to that, it's going to diminish the enjoyment that they have of their property. And so as we designed this, we've moved the edge of the building farther away from our property line and our roof line lower than the current building. So we believe that the new building is going to provide more opportunity for sunlight and less opportunity for noises and concerns for that to leave the site.
And a side note for the younger people in the audience, Johnny and Roy was from Emergency 51.
Emergency.
Because I'm old and I remember that show. So to get through we're going to get through all these questions. I don't know if there's other questions that, so I'm not ignoring you on purpose, but we want to try and get through all of these that were submitted. So 3 people asked about response times and the best routes taken. So we talked a little bit before, but how will you identify those routes? And will you always come out and go one way, or unless there's something over on 3rd Avenue?
Yeah.
How will you decide that?
Yeah, it's a great question. And we are in the process of a much bigger project than just looking at this location and this station. for that. We're currently working with the city and county planners to be able to, and CDOT, to be able to identify what we consider as the fire department and the police agencies consider primary thoroughfares for response routes, secondary thoroughfares, and tertiary. And we're doing that in an effort to try to help identify, as our town continues to grow. Obviously, anybody that's had the opportunity to be able to drive on Camino del Rio lately in late afternoon knows that, and early morning knows that we're dealing with some really big traffic issues all throughout our community. And so we are looking really hard at that. We're cooperating very heavily with CDOT as an example. And their take, interestingly enough, on the use of Camino del Rio is that currently at our current location, every time our units leave that station, it is shutting down and disrupting the flow of traffic on Camino del Rio. Where at an alternate location, such as this one, the only time that we would be slowing down or stopping traffic on Camino del Rio is if we had to go across Main and down to Camino del Rio and then turn left to go south, which would be much less often than the current set of situations where every time we leave the station, we're stopping the traffic. Interestingly enough, and I didn't know this until we worked with CDOT on this, when we change the lights or interrupt the traffic flow so that we can get out under emergency or priority conditions, it takes 6 to 7 cycles of that light. Even the hawk light that is at that's at 12th and Camino now. It takes 6 to 7 cycles of that light to get back to normal. So it's a disruption that continues on beyond just the emergency vehicles traveling through there. And so we were actually surprised to hear that they're actually not just in favor of us moving, but their statement was anything that diminishes the amount of times that emergency vehicles are entering that Camino del Rio corridor is a good move for them. Now, as it relates to our response characteristics for all the other areas, obviously, if we're running something that's on 4th or 5th or 6th going up just outside of this neighborhood, we're going to be able to get there a bit quicker. If we're going the other direction, we're going to be able to get there a bit slower. We think that we've got a good traffic plan, and I've met one of the opportunities I had early on was to meet with board of directors for the Boulevard Neighborhood Association. And in talking with those folks, they were really concerned about whether or not we were planning on blaring up and down 3rd Avenue through that historic housing district with our lights and sirens going. And 3rd Avenue is not a good venue for us to respond on. And so what I would say to you is that you will see us avoiding that as much as we possibly can. From this location, it doesn't make sense for us to go to 3rd Avenue and try to work on being able to go up and down that, because there's so many hidden intersections where it's a hazard for us to be responding on that. We may very well sometimes come back through that, but I think the only time you would see us on 3rd Avenue is either returning from a call or if the calls are on the east side of 3rd and we had to cross 3rd to get there. Our plan to go to North Main is down the hill on 12th to Main, a right turn and up. Our plan to go to Florida Road, which we run to a good bit, and is one of our primary routes for getting to the college, would be down to Main, down to the major turn just beyond Ted Hermisman's remodel project and up the street there. And so I think that we've got a good plan for how traffic flow would work. Because the apparatus bays are drive-through bays, you would see us returning on 13th or from the back side of the property and leaving to go out on the 12th Street side. Now, this is all subject to change based on the new information that we may get from our traffic study that's currently being undertaken. And if they've got better recommendations for us, or preferences based on what they've learned from traffic flow studies, this may be subject to change. But that's the current set of plans that we have for how traffic will operate and response routes will look.
Three people want to know why the fire department wasn't open about the purchase, or basically the perception, why weren't you transparent?
Yep. And it's a great question. Believe me when I tell you that it crossed my mind multiple times that I really didn't want to engage in any practices that would cause me to spend my retirement years at Leavenworth rather than at the HDJ Ranch in Red Mesa, Colorado. So I was really concerned about that. The process that the school district chose to use was a sealed bid process. It was advertised nationally. John Wells, as a local realtor, was the local representative for that. John and Zane both worked on that, but they partner with, I think, a larger or broader reaching real estate firm out of Denver, who was responsible for the national advertising for that. At one point, while the building was being advertised, my son, who went to Pepperdine with a kid who's now a real estate developer in Florida, got a call from this kid in Florida saying, hey, this building that's in Durango, Colorado just came up on our radar. What's the deal with this? So I know that it was advertised far and wide. The instructions that we received from John Wells, which was who we needed to deal with in order to place a bid for the property, were that it was a sealed bid process, that we should write a scope of use and provide that to the school district with a bid for what it was that we would offer to pay for the property. And that's what we did. We were, it was made very clear to us through that process that it wasn't something that we were to share with anyone, and that the details of all the bids would be considered by the school district, and they would use that as the basis for their decision making. Now, when you're operating in an organization that's run publicly funded, we operate on taxpayer money, there's some real needs for transparency. And I can tell you that I've heard my board, who are all sitting here tonight, say 100 times to me, we want to be transparent with the way that we do business. We want to make sure that we're very evident and obvious with the things that we're doing. That felt very different from sealed bid process and things like that. But we're competitively bidding against private entities that operate very differently than we do. And that was the process. When we moved forward, there was a point where the school district and the fire board agreed that we were at a point where we were all okay with the details of our purchase agreement going out. And so we released a good bit of details associated with that then, including who we were, which wasn't evident at the beginning of the process, and what it was that we had offered. And then finally, after the closing, all of the closing documents become a matter of public record. That doesn't happen for private businesses when they buy something, but for us, because we're tax funded and public, at the point that we closed on the building, all of that documentation was fair game and became public. And we've actually received some open record requests and provided our purchase agreement, the closing documents and details, and many other documents that we have associated with that purchase. And so I'll take occasion right now that if our process was offensive to anyone, I take responsibility for that. I apologize to you for that. It was not our intent to be hiding anything. It was our intent to be competitive with these other entities that didn't have the same requirements as us, so that we could be successful in purchasing this property. And that's what we did.
And you answered this earlier when you were talking about the renderings, but 9R being a historical building, do you want to add anything with what measures will be made to preserve the landmark? And you did answer. quite a bit of it. Will like the carriage house be similar brick or
Yep.
some things that will blend better?
Yep. So one of the things that I've had the benefit of learning as I met with the creative district and some folks from Historical Society and our planning division is simply that trying to exactly replicate the design characteristics of this building is a bad idea. We shouldn't do that. And so as we've worked forward, because as I was saying those words, Tracy was kind of looking at me across the room, halfway smiling, in an attempt to not just laugh at me for my lack of knowledge. But what I've learned is that the way to go about doing this with new construction that's designed to fit with other old construction is build something that has many of the same design characteristics, but don't try to match up brick colors, don't try to match up exact things. Like I thought maybe we'd put the pilasters like are on the front of this building on the new building. That turned out to be a bad idea. And so I'm leaving it to the professionals who do this for a living to design us a building. It's important to us that it fits. It fits with the design motifs of this building, that it fits the neighborhood, that it enhances the beauty of the neighborhood here, and that we move forward with the opportunity to have our presence here, not be a blight on the community, but be something that adds value to this community, the fire department being here. We want to walk away from this, having our closest neighbors be proud of the fact that they live next to the fire station and look forward to seeing the men and women that serve out of this building. That's what we want to do.
Couple people want to know the meeting's being recorded, so we are recording this.
Yep.
It'll be posted onto YouTube and accessible through your website.
Yep.
That's all correct there. So I want to, one person, and these other questions were asked by one person, which I'm kind of surprised more people didn't ask this, but will you use local contractors? And if so, how? And if not, why not?
Yep. So it is absolutely our preference, and I'll look for my board members to be nodding over here, but it's absolutely our preference to be using local contractors. We believe that the best money that there is in this town is money that we can garner from somewhere else and bring it to our community, and it stays here. And the next best money is money that's earned here and stays in this community. And the worst money is money that's earned here and leaves this community and goes other places. And so, quite frankly, I think that we very much make purchasing decisions and operate along those lines. The board members that we have here are local business people, and they operate. Matt Leader is a contractor in this community. We've got people that are making these decisions that are Durango, Colorado. They are a substantial portion of our community, just like all of you are. And so we very much want the benefits of us spending this money here to stay in our community. And so if we have any opportunity at all, we will hire local contractors. We also have to be responsible and be good stewards of the tax money that we have. And so we aren't going to pay hundreds of thousands of dollars extra to get to spend our money locally. But we've been, in our experience across the last two projects that we've done, we've been quite successful in getting to select the actual workforce to be very much from our area, if not just Durango, then certainly regionally to Cortez, to Farmington. And that happens when you have labor trade skills that just aren't available in our community. So yes, we are committed to that, and we have to balance that with being responsible for the money, but we do absolutely have that as a goal as well.
So being the chamber guy, I did not ask this question, but I probably could have. Will you need to raise taxes to fund the project and future needs?
Yeah, it's a great question. The fire district has established now, based on the four, if any of you remember when I was coming and visiting with all of you about our proposal for our last mill rate increase, we said that one of the four initiative areas that we had to address was our ability to develop the ability to handle our capital needs, both replacement of rolling stock and the facilities needs that we have. We have established through that action the ability to fund our capital needs. And I'm saying that for now. We have done that since we got that mill rate increase, and we intend to continue doing that. I can tell you as the CEO, if you will, of the fire district and my responsibilities for budgeting, managing our finances and things like that, that we have a funding stream dedicated to capital each year that will cover our costs with this. A good portion of our costs we've already invested with money that our previous boards had the foresight to save and to set aside for future capital. And into the future, we will need to incur some debt and take on a loan for that, but we have a funding mechanism to pay off that loan. So we will not be coming to you asking you for a bond on behalf of the fire district. I want to remind you again that I don't have the authority nor the knowledge to speak on behalf of the city. And so if we're successful in moving forward with the opportunity to partner with the police department, I don't know what their funding mechanisms will be, although we will be working together at every step of the way with our partners at the city to try and create an opportunity that's easiest for them to take advantage of and say yes to.
So one of the real hot topics right now are workforce housing.
Yeah.
And are you considering including workforce housing within the scope of this project?
Yeah, so it's an interesting question. One of the bids that came in had attached to it some workforce housing that was proposed for school teachers. And I think that our community absolutely needs to pay more attention and dedicate more funding toward workforce housing. I can tell you that as the fire chief, I think the worst thing in the world that I could possibly do is try to ask my firefighters after they work 48 hours, going out in high acuity situations, handling life and death decision-making, would be to ask them to try and live and sleep at the fire station. So we aren't considering workforce housing for firefighters at this site. What we are doing though, is we're partnering with other agencies. Wasn't able to attend, but we're a part of a group or a forum that the Economic Development Alliance, as an example, is working on to handle workforce housing issues. We actually have met with a contractor and an architect that have a current project going, and they've offered us the opportunity to buy into some units that could become apartments for entry-level firefighters, or help to use that as a recruitment and retention tool to entice firefighters to come here, medics to come here from other communities. So we are keenly aware of workforce housing issues. I've had many, many people that we've selected and made job offers to that have had to turn them down because they couldn't afford to live in our community. As I look around the room, there are firefighters here. And I can tell you that the greatest majority of our firefighters and medics don't benefit from the ability to live in Durango. They can't live in the community they serve because they can't afford it. And that's one of the realities of being a firefighter and a medic. And so I am keenly aware of those issues. And we are working to develop workforce housing for firefighters, just not on this site.
So someone asked, what will you do to mitigate spills and prevent contamination in the stormwater drainage system?
Yeah. So we, like anybody else, is subject to all of the water and wastewater regulations. And that the way that ends up working out is it comes down to super accurate engineering studies that topographically study the way that the changes to the surface area of this project would impact the amount of runoff, where wastewater, stormwater, spilled fuel, or anything else would go. And we have a contractor that has done that work for us already. That survey is already complete, I believe. I think I'm correct in saying that, right, Randy? So we are subject to all the same regulations and rules as anybody else. We do not take exemptions from things like that because, I mean, we've got to live in this environment too, and we're keenly aware of the problems associated there. What I will also tell you is that we don't support a system of fueling our emergency response vehicles on site, except at our very remote stations. So our career station up near the ski area has a remote fueling deal because they would burn almost a tank of fuel coming to town to get fuel. So that doesn't make any sense. But we fuel our emergency response vehicles off-site. We're currently have under contract with Brennan's to do that. So another local vendor, and that's where we have our fuel accounts.
Somebody wants to know, are you going to have solar as part of the project?
Yep, I would love to be able to do that, although my understanding based on some initial conversations with solar purveyors is that because of the kind of construction we're doing, building we're doing, it may not be cost-effective maneuver for us to take. And so I certainly am interested in looking into it, but I'm not going to commit that we absolutely are or absolutely are not at this point.
Okay. Someone wanted to know, why are you moving, or why would you want to move the administration offices from the Buckley Park area to downtown?
Yep. So the consolidation of our services in the downtown area, just like our call volume being centered on the downtown area, so too are most of the other administrative services that we provide. Our ability to be in meetings with our partners at the city, our partners with the county, police agencies, all of those things all typically occur in the downtown area. Our fire inspectors do most of the work that they do in this core area of downtown. Those of you that own businesses, own restaurants, you see them on a regular basis. They wave to you, you know them by name. So it makes sense from a proximity standpoint for us to move down. We also are growing and expanding as our workforce expands. And so some of the services that we provide at our current location where administration is, do not have room currently to grow. We're out of office space there. And we have the ability to build into a size that would facilitate the future for us if we move to this location, and then give room to Chief Krupa's training division for expansion, our volunteer programs for expansion, our facilities and fleet services for expansion, and we would be able to benefit from that. The other thing that I want you to know, and this is more than just a benefit to the fire district, but it's a benefit to all of you as well, is that as we move forward with this plan, if we're able to accomplish this and create an emergency service center and move the police and fire departments together on this site, there are 4 buildings that 3 of them are major properties in our community that are currently exempt from taxes, that don't create any revenue for our community. And that is River City Hall, this site, our police department on 2nd, and the administrative services building or farm building at Bodo Park next to our main fire station there. And if we're able to accomplish this project, 3 of those 4 facilities would be vacated by this action, creating the opportunity for them to become tax driving, not just from a sales tax standpoint, but from a revenue standpoint with property tax, and to be available for local small business or expansion of restaurant opportunities or many other things to be able to move into them. So while it wouldn't be appropriate for me to comment on what the city's plans are for River City Hall and the police department, should we accomplish this, River City Hall and the police department would then be vacated, and they could do with those a multitude of things, right? Expand city services or sell them into the free market so that somebody could make them into brand new use facilities, and be tax drivers from a property tax and sales tax standpoint, maybe even from a lodger's tax standpoint. So the community would benefit greatly from the economies of scale of us doing this, as well as the city's police department and the fire district would benefit from that.
So you mentioned this, and maybe I missed it earlier, but how many police cars do they take up? Do you know how many police cars are parked around that when we're talking about the parking, and then all the police and their administration park in the neighborhoods and then walk on in?
Yeah.
What will you do to add parking here, not only for the patrol cars? I understand maybe even a secure gated area that they would be able to park.
Yep. So our current plan includes 59 on-site parking spaces for police department employees. So their administrative staff, their police officers coming to work, their police cars to be parked here, things like that. That was the goal that we had, was 60 spaces, what Chief Brammer said that he needed to have on site for that. Now, what that's going to do is it's going to free up 29 spaces that are currently designated specifically for police parking around the current police station. And it's going to put all of their employee parking on site here. The folks that live on 3rd Avenue know that many of our police department members end up having to park on 3rd Avenue where there's free parking and then walk down to the police station to get in. And so you'll benefit from this as well, from all of the load of the police department traffic, not parking on 3rd Avenue, but having the opportunity to park on site. On the other side of the building, we've got 32 designed fire department on-site parking spaces, and that will facilitate the 8 to maybe as many as 9 or 10 operational workers that we have here on a day-to-day basis. Even at shift change, we have 10 here and 10 coming in, so 20 cars for a short period of time. And we'll also facilitate the parking area for the administrative staff that works on this site. The last thing that you should know about the parking is that we believe that no matter what the parking decision is that's made about how we manage the 12th Street issue, we believe that all of the plans that we're going to kick forward represent a net increase in the available public parking and metered parking spaces that the city has available.
So you talk about all the advantages. Do you see any disadvantages? And I know I've been in the police station and it's old. It needs, I mean, I will say it needs to be renovated itself, but are there any disadvantages that you see in combining the police and the fire and everything in this one facility?
Yeah, I think that there's always, concerns about that, about how will it work? Is this something that we can pull off? Is it a good idea? But police officers and firefighters tend to be very competitive. I'm kind of worried about what might go on in the gymnasium facility here with ultimate frisbee or something going on down there. I think that one of the best answers to that I'd shoot at you is that we found out through dealing with some folks that we're talking with that had experience with other agencies throughout our state, that there's a wonderful example of where this has already been done by a community where they've experienced the economies of scale associated with what I'm talking about. The city of Avon, which is a home rule city in the state of Colorado, partnered with a fire district, the Eagle Fire Protection District, which provides service in the same area, because they had a piece of property that had room enough to facilitate both fire and police services on site. And they did that. We're benefiting now greatly from, they've actually shared with us all of their organizing documents, how they cooperate together, how they appreciate the economies of scale that they have, who pays for maintenance on things like common areas. It's one of the great attributes that we're going to have here. If police needs 19,000 square feet and we need 16,000 square feet, and we've got the balance of this building as common space that is an auditorium that both agencies can use, meeting rooms that we can all use, a gymnasium facility that our workforces both need to benefit from. We've got the opportunity to be able to do that, where I'm paying for all of the space that's dedicated to me and half of the space I've got access to of the public access space. So there's great economies for both agencies in moving in together. I think we can do it very well. Chief Brammer and I, Bryce Current, the deputy chief of the police department, Randy Black, our deputy chief of the fire district, have been working together really hard on this project to figure out how we can make this work. And I think it represents for our community a wonderful opportunity to take advantage of savings with the economies of scale, to add to the economic benefits that we can gain from this, making potentially River City Hall, the police department as it stands, and our farm building out in Buckley Park available for sale into the capital market, and give us the opportunity to secure a place to serve this community for years to come.
And two people, and I'm not sure on this question, but it's what they asked, but who are you working with and when did you begin talking to them? This may be going back to the purchase of the building.
Yeah. Yep.
How long ago and behind closed doors and?
Yeah, yeah. It all a bit seems like a blur to me now. But as we moved forward with the plan, as I explained it to you, to make a bid for acquiring this property, I did what I felt like was my due diligence. I was in the ear of my board. We ended up having a special meeting to consider what needed to be done and if I could move forward with this. And I took occasion to try to schedule personal meetings with all of the city councilors and the city manager and the police chief. Now, those were not public meetings. They were not official meetings. They were, hey, here's a heads up because I have respect for you and it's a courtesy advisement of what we're doing. And then as we moved forward and things started to happen, we started getting word that we may be successful in actually purchasing this property. And so we started having official meetings to just advise the city council that we thought that we might have this opportunity. Then we started having joint meetings of the fire board and the city council to officially extend to them the opportunity to be able to join us. Now, that was all happening at a very different speed than the speed of Facebook and Instagram and email and people getting ahead of us. And so a lot of the consternation, I think it's fair to represent, was related to the fact that the rumor mill, to a great extent, the folks that were mobilizing about particular issues that they had were operating much faster than the bureaucratic process could happen between the fire district and the city. But I feel really good about where we are, where I've been able to get over the course of time all of the offers that we're trying to make, all of the ideas, all of our cards on the table so that our public can now understand what it is that we've been trying to build toward. I think it's really important for you to understand that we want you to have a say in this and to be a part of it. We want the opportunity to serve you for years to come. And what we're telling you as professionals in this business is that we need this location in order to be able to do that. As we look around, think about all the stuff that's being built across the last 2 years, across the last 5 years. God, we had to buy a $1.2 million ladder truck off of a demo just to be able to serve the hotels that were being built, were approved and were being built, because we didn't have a ladder truck that could get to the roof of these buildings we're building in this town right now. And the opportunities for large parcels of land from which we can serve are less and less and less, and more and more and more expensive. And this is our throwing out the anchor and assuring that we can serve this community for the years to come.
So, and I'm going to ask you, how many firefighters and EMS do you have?
Yep. So 180 members total across our organization. And that comes in the form of, there are 3 shifts of full-time firefighter medics, 24 people on each one of those shifts. And then there are administrative staff that also have response capabilities. And then there are a multitude of different types of part-time workers that we have. Some of them come in when our regular shift workers are sick or on vacation or at training. Some of them serve in the capacity of working for us from April till October through our wildland season. And then they go off to exotic places and ski or kayak or mountain climb for the rest of their year. Some of them serve in a capacity where they've retired from high-level Forest Service or BLM or Park Service positions, and then come back to our agency so that they can continue to go out on big national events and serve our nation as experts in their fields. And then we have a strong group, a strong contingent of volunteer members that are community members, just like all of you, that raise their hand and say, I would like to learn how to take care of our community. I'm willing to stand up and say nothing will happen to you on the day that I'm on duty or I'm available. And so it's a wonderful organization. I'm really proud of the people that we have working for us.
Now, if people didn't hear answers tonight, whether it's, the presentation or all the questions that I've gone through, what's the best way to reach out? Is it going through your website, email? If they have questions, can they go ahead and send them to you?
Yeah, absolutely. We have a tool on our website where anybody can ask a question at any time. We can do that. If you look up the fire district on our website, there's contact information, phone numbers, email for myself, for Chief Black, for Chief Krupa, all of our staff. You can reach out and contact us that way. Our board members' information has been posted along with contact information, like their email addresses and their phone numbers. And so they're available as well. And we're glad to try and answer your questions, to hear from you. I'm still interested in hearing about your concerns. I hope that one of the things you gain from the information given out tonight is that that we really are listening to what it is that you're saying. When I talk about putting a sound wall and moving the side of a building back so that people can get sunlight in their backyard, that didn't come because I just guessed that. I didn't have any idea about that. We're listening to what the concerns of our community are, and we're trying to answer to those. And at the same time, serve this much grander mission, which is take care of us when we're hurt, help us, rescue us when we're trapped or our house is on fire. And we're trying to fit all of that stuff into this same project, which is incredibly challenging, but I suspect at the end, I'm going to walk away from this having had it been incredibly rewarding as well.
It's interesting because I'm sitting here thinking when you're talking about, we were going to add on to the Santa Rita location for the chamber building. And we were planning on doing that. And that got yanked out from under us. I was told by the former city manager, we're going to turn that into a sand volleyball court. I went, oh, well, there were my plans. And luckily we were able to transition, not the scope of this project. And one of the things I remember is thinking 4 stages of change: denial, resistance, exploration, and then commitment. I was in complete denial that I was going to move out of Santa Rita. I was like, well, okay, well, let's, I guess I better get over that. And then the resistance. Well, let's start looking at other places. We got to find something. We looked, just like with your project, we looked at buying other buildings. Nothing worked out. And then Gina Piccoli said, what if we do a land swap? Tear down the old A-frame, which used to be the chamber building. And that building had no insulation in it. It was so old, dilapidated. And so the city said, we'll take that building down. We'll do a land swap, give you the lease, similar to what we had at Santa Rita. And we moved forward with it. And luckily we came in on time and on budget. So I just would like to say to people, think of that, the denial, resistance, exploration, commitment, and do think about some of the different things that will take us to some of the future things, years and years and years down the road. And, when you guys do respond, I remember your predecessor saying, what other organization would you call, hoping they get there as fast as they can, come into your house, pump a loved one full of drugs, disrobe them, throw them in a vehicle and take them away. And you completely trust that they're going to do that. So just for my little, opportunity to say that, thank you for everything you guys do. Now, do I dare say we've got 8 minutes left? And is there a question you want me to open up, or do we want to shut this down?
Yeah, I'm glad to spend the remaining time if anybody's got any questions.
So is there? Okay.
One question I want to revisit is, if indeed the 10 million of the 25 million project cost is going to be coming from the city, and I'm not aware that the city's got the $10 million not laying around, will that, the maturation of that funding source impact your ability, DFDE's ability to begin remodeling and repurposing this facility?
Yeah, it's a great question. The other way to ask that is, what if the city says no, right? What if, am I dead in the water if the city says, no, we're not going to do this? And I would say in both of those, I hope that you can tell tonight that I really believe in this plan that we're putting together. And I think that for our community, the best thing that could happen is for us to partner with the city and have the police department and fire department working together. So I am not putting all my eggs in that basket, but I am sailing hard in that direction, right? And I think that that is truly what would be best for this community. We're trying to inspire the city's opportunities for that by offering some different ways in which they could enter into this and cooperate with this, with us on this. Maybe the fire district funds this and we establish a lease that covers the payment, that we're funding it from year to year, creating payment opportunity, or maybe with some other things. My wife, who's very much smarter than I am, said to me, "How you need to stop that. It's not your responsibility to figure out how the city is going to pay for it. It's your responsibility to give them the opportunity." And so I'm trying to stick to that philosophy, but we have some ideas about how we can make this easy for them to say yes to and facilitate this. And it's clearly not my purview or even appropriate for me to comment on how they should do it. What we want to do is we want to create an environment that makes it easy for them to say yes to and serves the community well. And that's what we're trying to do. As far as the Plan B goes, I got to tell you, I've had multiple agencies that I've spoken with or that have shown interest in also sharing tenancy with us here. Not obviously going to spout off any of those right now, but I think that we've got some Plan B opportunities should that be an eventuality. It's the highest priority for us right now is to functionally move our response services to this site. And so I would tell you that the fire district would put a higher priority on starting and getting our response services moved to here, because as people have said, we very clearly already have a space that's currently working for us to run the fire district out of administratively, and so too does the police department, although we think this will be a much better one as we get this built out.
First of all, thank you for what you do. It's very appreciated by the community. And I think everybody understands the need that we have to expand. The big difference to me with this area versus where you are now is that it's heavily used by pedestrians. Buckley Park, this is 12th Street, Main Avenue, Versa, Main Avenue. With all of the fire trucks and police cars now, how do you plan on keeping it safe for pedestrians?
Yep. So we currently live in a fire station at River City Hall that is surrounded by a park and has a Discovery Museum next to it. And so we are quite used to the issues associated regarding safety for that. It's one of the things that keeps fire chief guys up at night is worrying about us hitting somebody or doing things like that. I think that we have an opportunity to be able, we have an incredibly robust training program that we put all of our driver operators through. Everybody on the crew, you know, we operate from a sense of everybody on the crew is responsible for the safety of the entirety of the crew, looking out for safety hazards and things like that. And I would tell you that I believe that we can make this move and operate safely here. As far as the police department is concerned, I think what you see most times with the police department, and again, I'm no police chief, so I don't want to speak for Chief Bremer at all, but those guys end up being able to come to work, check in, and then go out on patrol, and typically are responding from various locations from throughout the community. I think that we can very easily do this safely. It's interesting, one of the comments that I got quite some time ago that I remember distinctly though is, can you imagine somebody thinking it's a good idea to put a fire station next to a park? And if you travel around our country, what you'll notice is that very typically our communities put fire stations next to parks. Almost every fire station that I previously worked out of in Farmington was co-located with a park because it provides a level of security, an opportunity to have some stability there. If kids get hurt, if kids get lost, they can come to the fire station. And it really is a great partnership to co-occupy fire stations with parklands. I know that the people that are here that have grown used to the way that Buckley Park is now aren't used to that. But I think it really is a great opportunity and we can absolutely make it work. Yes.
So,
Why wasn't 13th, or what happened with 13th Street as the primary artery? There's much less traffic.
Yep. So 13th Street as a primary artery, one of the things that we were considering on that is that there's a significant grade. I actually spent some time just behind the building here talking with some folks that live just across 13th Street from here. And they were quite concerned about the grade aspects and whether or not there was room there. Quite frankly, the flow of traffic in the way that we've designed this seems to work better with us leaving onto 12th. 13th will be the main ingress and egress, quite likely for our police partners as they go in and out, and the return path for fire trucks and ambulances coming back. But just the way that the layout of the building facing, and the way that we could design it, it seemed to work better with us utilizing 12th as our exit for the emergency response vehicles and 13th as our return. And there may still be significant changes to that based on the information that we gain from the traffic study that's currently being done.
and so,
One more? Come on, Jack, we can do one more.
okay.
What do you got? Quickly.
You mentioned the interior square footage. How much asphalt covers the exterior square footage on that?
Oh, I'll bet that that's calculated, but I don't know. Could I get your contact information and I'll get back in touch with you about that?
I was just curious because it looks like a lot there, and we talked about a lot of parking spaces, and then we talked about the storm drainage, because I know
Yeah,
that would have some effect.
yeah. I'm not a geologist nor a scientist, so if I misstate this and I offend any geologists or scientists, I apologize. But I know that one of the things that they do is they look at what is the finished surface comparatively with what we're coming from to what it is that our finished project is, and they do an evaluation of that. Matt Leader, our asphalt contractor, is shaking his head yes. So I know that they do a comparative analysis and assure that if we've increased the hard surface areas, which are the areas that won't absorb runoff water, we have to provide stormwater mitigation that can facilitate what they expect based on that. And the fact that Tracy hasn't drawn any stormwater mitigation ponds on any of these plans leads me to believe that he thinks that we're probably equivalent or less hard surface area. But let me do some research on that, and if you'll just leave me how to get in touch with y'all.
I was just curious on that. That it could be equivalent. To the pavement already is.
Yeah, and remember, right next to us now is paved all the way around it and covered with a school building. And so that also is hard surface and runs off all of the water. I assume maybe that old building absorbs a little bit of water, but probably not.
Okay, final question. You're just waving.
No.
Okay.
Ooh, if I get a final question, thank you. So I appreciated the concept of what went on with the chamber building. And part of my question on the costs of building on this property was, I'm sure in your planning process, you compared that to what it would cost to rebuild at River City Hall. And would you show us those numbers? Because it seems like for me, the taxpayer, it seems like such a much more reasonable approach to build the River City Hall location. And we know that the city has given you the opportunity to select that property.
No, they actually haven't. That's a mistruth.
I heard it.
Well-
Kim Baxter said, Kim Baxter asked you if you would be interested in that, and you said no.
Yeah, I said no, not
You
at
said yes at the start of the meeting. And then-
Holly, I'm not going to argue with you. The answer is no. We're building here. And we did not do a financial workup on what River City Hall would cost. We started looking into that when we thought we were going to get it. And when we were told no, we didn't continue that any further. And I'll further that comment by telling you that these are absolutely not final numbers either. They're where we are today. And we haven't hired a general contractor yet. And we don't know what our subs are going to quote us for prices. So this is a culmination of hundreds of hours of work to get to where we understand we are today.
So with that, I want to thank Chief. I want to thank all of you for attending tonight, as well as people that are listening in. Again, you go to durangofire.org is the website. If you have any other questions, and thank you everybody for being here. And with that, we'll wrap up.